Okay, you guys, welcome back. Welcome back, man. It's been a minute since I recorded one of these. If you guys have never tuned into one of my podcasts before, maybe you're a new subscriber to the channel. I sometimes often record these podcasts just to go over all the things that's happened in the MMA news over the week. And it's been a while since I've been back. So, a lot of people, I always recommend people to listen to this podcast, like in the background, maybe like you're doing something, cleaning your house, cleaning your room, playing video games. Just sit back and kick it with Trippy for a little while, man. I know some people used to tell me, man, that they listened to my podcast going on a walk, and I really appreciated that. But anyways, let's hop right into it, man. Okay, so I don't know if this is just me, but however, I felt like this was the most entertaining UFC fight card that we've had in a long time. Like, since UFC 300. Like, we've had some great fights since then, but it just has not hit the same way that this fight card did. We saw some great decisions, like some decisions that were decisions, yes, but however, like the fighters went for it. We also saw some good finishes, and of course that main event was also great, and it was an Israel Adesanya fight. You know how typically those go. Like, if I'm keeping it real, that may have been the most exciting Israel Adesanya fight that we've seen in like in a long time, just put it that way. I mean, like, really sit and think about it. Like, his last entertaining fight, but despite the finishes, was probably, I want to say, Kelvin Gastelum? No, probably not that far. I would say Robert Whittaker the first time, but you see how far ago that was? This man has fought so many times since then. And his last entertaining fight, where it was actually entertaining, was the Robert Whittaker KO. And that's saying something. Israel Adesanya's most entertaining fight has to be the one against Kelvin Gastelum, because it was so back and forth. But this sits at number 2. Let's be honest. I mean, what else do you want to put there? Maybe Derek Brunson, then this fight, but I really enjoyed it. That being said, I mean, we can go down the card real quick, but I really want to focus on the main event. We saw Li Jingliang. We could talk about that, man. That really broke my heart because I really like Li Jingliang. He got knocked out by Carlos Freitas. If I'm being honest, I wasn't impressed with either guy. I know Carlos really came out there and he put on a somewhat dominant performance against Li Jingliang, against the Leech. I'm gonna call him Leech. Against the Leech. But however, I know both guys just look sloppy to me, and I know I might get some comments about that, but I'm just keeping it real. Both guys look sloppy to me, and it wasn't really something where I was like, oh my gosh, like the people in this fight are serious number 1 and number 2 contenders, or serious like future champions. Like, I didn't get that from this, and it was a good knockout, and it's impressive to do that to the Leech. Like, don't get me wrong, it was impressive, but like, is he doing that to Ian Gary? Is he doing that to other welterweights, to Jeff Neal? Like, I'm just not. Is he doing that to Jack Della Maddalena? No. So I just thought both guys looked sloppy, but that's just my opinion. But the Leech gets knocked out, and I mean, this really doesn't hurt him stock too well. I mean, because it just doesn't. And then we got Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That was also somewhat of an entertaining fight. And of course, Tai Tuivasa loses again. That also breaks my heart. But like, once again, does it lower Tai Tuivasa's stock? No. But I mean, it does set a clear precedent about his career that he is not skilled enough to maybe be top 5 heavyweights in the world, but we don't need him to be. Tai Tuivasa is an entertaining fan favorite fighter, and let him continue to be. I don't even think he cares too much about being top 5 in the world. He just wants to be entertaining, and we need more fighters like that. Let's be honest, especially in today's UFC. And then Dan Hooker beats Mateusz Gamrot. Let me tell you guys something, man. I was very frustrated with the way Mateusz Gamrot was fighting, because it really, anytime this guy gets hit, he just dies for an ankle. Like, you saw him just flopping to the floor just to grab a leg. It's because that's how this guy always fights. Anytime he gets hit, anytime he gets touched, instead of using his hands, because he has good hands. The dude has decent hands. He has good striking. When I saw him fight Arman Tsarukyan, it really showed me like his skills on display against Arman Tsarukyan was great, and I really had I became fans of both of those guys. But then, like, when he fights these strikers, man, he fights so annoying. It was so frustrating. It was such an entertaining fight, one, yes, because Dan Hooker was bringing the fight. Mateusz Gamrot, man, was just trying to drop on an ankle every single time he got, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that Dan Hooker was able to find a way around it and beat Mateusz Gamrot. But however, as for the fight goes, obviously Mateusz came out and he was really like bringing the heat, and I was like, okay, like he beat down Dan Hooker in round one, and it was like, okay, like this could really be one-sided. But as soon as Hooker started to come back, Hooker's tough, man. But as soon as Hooker started to come back, man, that's when Mateusz Gamrot just started being, instead of looking to be entertaining, which no fighter should really look to be entertaining, but I mean, like, you still have a crowd watching you, man. And it's like, when you do that kind of stuff, it's just frustrating. Especially when you have the striking skills to really stay safe against Dan Hooker, man. It's Dan Hooker. Like, and that's not saying anything bad about Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's really on a run right now. But I mean, like, come on, man. Like, come on. But anyways, let's move forward, because I really want to talk about the main event, and I don't want to run out of time. Kai Kara-France knocked out Steve Erceg. A lot of people are surprised at the outcome of that fight, but I wasn't. I mean, I really thought that either guy could win. There was like a pinch of hype behind Steve Erceg, like a little bit. I'm not saying like it was like a big momentum, but like he was, for some reason, he was like a lot of people were like jumping on the bandwagon, and it was weird. And then he got knocked out. Now people are saying what they say about it because MMA fans are just so fickle. When it was just a great win for Kai Kara-France. It just looked like Steve Erceg was a little nervous to me. Like, he really was not trying to get hit. Like, and he really was like, I don't know, he just didn't look comfortable. And, well, I mean, if he was nervous, what he was nervous of ended up happening. So, I mean, it is what it is. But now let's talk about the main event. We're 7 minutes in and I have yet to talk about it. But this is what I'm going to spend majority of my time talking about, because we got some interesting things to cover. Okay, number one. So, Adesanya was winning majority of the fight. And Adesanya has so many haters, man. I don't know where you guys came from. I don't know if you guys been hating this guy since he originally started his career. And when I say started his career, I really mean when he ran on his run. I don't know if you guys hated him then, because if I'm being honest, I don't remember Israel Adesanya having a lot of haters at the time. I remember everybody loved this guy. Like, everybody was a big fan of him. And, you know, he wins the belt, and then he's really on top of the world. But, like, it seemed like once he went on a run of just boring fight after boring fight, he really brought out a lot of haters, man. When I actually don't think Israel is dislikable. I actually think he's a likable guy. But, like, a lot of people don't forgive him for, like, the boring-ass fights he puts on. And trust me, man, I do kind of understand that, because when you fork out, $80 for a UFC pay-per-view, and then the pay-per-view you bought, the guy ends up laying a goose egg, I do understand. But, man, the hate for Adesanya has really gotten out of hand. And look, I'm going to cover this whole African thing, man. I'm glad Dricus and Dricus and Izzy were able to settle the score. But I really hate that this was made about race, man. A lot of people will mention that, like, you know, Adesanya was the one that really pushed this. And if I'm being honest, he was. But Dricus did bring it up. And look, I don't think there's nothing wrong with what Dricus said. I actually think what he said made a lot of sense. He said that he was going to be the first African residing champion. That's what he was trying to make a point that he still lives in Africa. He breathes African air. He eats the African food. Like, he lives there. He wakes up every morning. He trains in Africa. He has not needed a reason to either move to the United States like Francis and Kamaru did, or move to New Zealand, to a first world country. He never had to do that. And that's what he was really trying to make his point on, is that he is African grown. And that's fine, man. But where I don't think there's nothing wrong with what he said. And Adesanya and them, they did kind of, like, I don't know why they got so sensitive about it. I mean, I kind of do know why. But, like, it's where I feel like I just wish that it was never mentioned. Like, Dricus could have been like, I'm going to become an African king. Like, I'm also going to become a champion from Africa. Where I really think he kind of, like, messed up is that, like, you don't say, like, I'm the first real African champion. Like, you don't say that, man. Like, saying I'm the first real African champion. Like, that is kind of a slap in the face to the other guys. It is. Now, because whenever you think about it, it's like somebody saying, like, hypothetically, it's like somebody saying, like, there's been so many black UFC fighters. That's like somebody coming in and be like, I'm going to be the first real black UFC fighter because I come from the hood. I come from the slums. Not saying black people come from the hood. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But that's like somebody saying that. And just like all black people don't come from the hood, it's also the same point that, like, all, quote, real African champions don't have to just grow up in Africa. Like, there's African people that are living here in the United States, and they're still considered African people, but they were born and raised here, but they're African. So I kind of get it, but I kind of don't, because I think that this got played way out of proportion, man. And then Izzy ended up embarrassing himself in the octagon that day. Like, I think it got blown way out of proportion. Way out of proportion. And, hey, look, like, it's over now. The fight happened. So hopefully we don't have to hear about this anymore, about this whole race thing, because it really makes fights uncomfortable for me. Because, like, I remember when Colby Covington first fought Kamaru Usman, like, a lot of people were bringing race into it and Donald Trump and politics and all this crap. Like, I just really was, it was just really uncomfortable, man. And it was even worse when Colby fought Woodley. I hate, like, sports is not the platform for politics, man, and race and religion and all this stuff. Like, religion is actually fine, but, like, race, man, it's like, that's like, and in politics, it's like, man, like, I don't want to see that on my, like, entertainment screen. Like, I just don't find that kind of stuff entertaining. But anyways, let's get more into the fights, because I wanted to touch on that because obviously Dricus made Adesanya cry at the press conference. Izzy, like, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Izzy lost his aura. Like, Izzy has always been emotional, guys. He's always been an emotional guy. He's always been. This guy openly talks about, getting bullied and crying and all of it. Like, he talks about that. He wears that on his sleeve, like, So to me, it's not that big of a, like, surprise that he started crying at the press conference. It was out of left field, but, like, people are like, he lost his aura. I'm like, it really wasn't that big of a, like, it wasn't that huge, because Izzy has even stated that he's emotional. And I honestly thought that I honestly wanted to root for Izzy more because he did that. And that he had the guts to sit there and cry in front of the world stage, because he knows, like, let's be real, there's freaking trolls on the internet that's going to screen clip that and harass him for it. But it's okay, man. I mean, to me, there's nothing wrong with that. When you want it that bad and what you fight for, if you believe in it enough, he said he was fighting for his family and he cried, and that really was the root for him. Like, that's why he was so mad at Dricus, is because he felt like he was calling him and his family, like, non-traditional Africans because they don't reside in Africa. And I want to also cover this. Like, just because somebody grows up privileged doesn't mean that they don't have a sad story or they don't have a struggle of their own. I get so annoyed with that. Like, you see it a lot in mainstream media that, like, people say, like, oh my gosh, like, oh yeah, I'm Naruto because I come from, bro, I was eating out of a trash can. Me and my family, we were eating out of a trash can, man. We were stealing food out the grocery store, and oh my gosh, food stamps bought me everything I own. Like, it's like, okay, just because you come from living in a hole in, like, some cave somewhere, living like a damn caveman, doesn't mean that somebody who grew up in freaking Beverly Hills can't put in just as much work as you do, or that they don't deserve it as much as you do. This is the real world, after all. Like, just because you grew up privileged versus a person who grew up in poverty doesn't make the person who grew up in poverty deserve it more than the person who grew up privileged. It just doesn't work that way. You have to put in the work. You have to be motivated, or whatever the heck you want to say. Have the discipline, have the courage to go for what you go for, despite what background you come from. Just because you grew up eating out of a trash can, and this is not mocking anybody, with no freaking, I don't know, with freaking sleeping on the floor and stuff. Just because you grew up in those conditions, you could still grow up and be a lazy bum. It has nothing to do with your work ethic and your discipline. Matter of fact, we find most people who do grow up in those conditions end up being a product of their environment and staying within their environment. I mean, it is what it is. So I'm going to touch on that. Now I'm sorry, I went on a tangent, but now let's talk about the actual fight. Okay, so the actual fight, how it actually went down. So I believe that Adesanya was winning majority of the fight. A lot of it came in round one. It was very tit for tat. We saw Dricus land a momentary takedown, but it was like he didn't really hold to it. So it just was really going towards the striking numbers. Now, on the numbers, Adesanya outstruck Duplessis for majority of the round. But, however, I feel like the bigger shots were landed by Duplessis. A lot of people, I posted a short, and a lot of people had a lot to say about what I said. I'm not pushing no hate bandwagon for Izzy. As a matter of fact, it has nothing to do with either fighter. I just call it down the middle how I see it. Although some of your favorite YouTubers don't do the same. They're fueled by hate for one fighter, but it's okay. But anyways, so what I really found interesting what Adesanya was doing is that he was attacking the body. He was attacking the body a lot, but Dricus kept countering him because Israel Adesanya, whenever he boxes, he leaves his hands low and his chin is just in the air, just ready to get sniped at. But he was attacking that body, man. What I wish he would have kept doing is that I wish he would have kept switching stances so that he can get to that outside leg and keep tagging that lower leg of Dricus. Because Dricus was not responding well to the body shots or the lower calf kicks. And seeing how Dricus likes to just bounce off of one leg and kind of like, he just launches towards you, like it would really take a lot from his explosivity if Adesanya just maintained kicking that lower calf. The body shots were working because, I mean, Dricus, man, he holds his hand so high and it's just like he's only trying to protect his head. Head does not protect his body at all. And I honestly think that is something that other fighters can use as a weapon against him. The lower calf kicks and the body shots. Like, that's something that these fighters will be able to use against Dricus Duplessis. I really do. Because in my opinion, that's a hole in his game. But, I mean, Dricus has so many holes in his game, man. Like, I don't get this guy. Like keeping it a bean. Dricus Duplessis. Like, if let's say that you had no idea who he is. Like, let's say that I showed you his fight and you knew nothing about him. You didn't know he was Dricus Duplessis. And you watched this fight, dude, you would say, oh my gosh, like, how is he even in the UFC? When he swings, he leaves himself open. He just looks at the floor and throws an overhand. He kind of bounces, like jumps into range, like lunges into range just to land a punch. His body, his footwork is so bad. And it's like everything is so awkward. But what I continue to make a mistake of is that it might not be that he's unskilled. It might just be that he is just awkward. It's awkward, but it's effective. So, because, I mean, he was able to beat Adesanya, guys. A lot of people are going off like, oh my gosh, Israel made a mistake, that's why he lost the fight. No. How it really went down is that Israel Adesanya was forced to fight at a pace that he is not used to. Israel Adesanya is used to controlling the pace of the fight, and he did not have control of the pace of the fight. He did not. Neither guy really did, but I would say he was fighting more so at Dricus' pace because Adesanya was more uncomfortable fighting at that pace than Dricus was. Put it that way. Both guys were tiring, but, I mean, whenever you get tired like that, it really comes down to who's more built for war than the other. Dricus was more built for war. Now, what I mean by, I'm going to explain this further, but really, like, it was a pace that was being set by Dricus, honestly. Adesanya was getting hit more than he typically does. He was getting hit a lot more than what he typically does. I mean, even in the Sean Strickland fight, the pace was very slow. But in this fight, it was very fast. And Adesanya is just simply not used to fighting at a fast pace like that. He is used to controlling the range, sticking on the outside, low kicking from a distance, and jabbing and just moving on his bike. You can't touch him. But when you have somebody like Dricus, right, who is just lunging into range with punches, and it's so awkward, and you don't see where every punch is coming from, and he's tagging you. Plus, he has so many openings where you can hit him back, and it just kind of goes into this battle where it's like back and forth, back and forth. Adesanya's not used to that. He's not used to even coming forward. He was coming forward for some of this fight because it turned into whoever comes forward lands or wins the fight. That's what it turned into. Both guys just ended up really just fighting in the middle and just kind of just going back and forth, tit for tat, going back and forth. And Dricus started using this wrestling, and he was really mixing it up well because he kind of had to. And Adesanya was forced to get back in his face and push the pace so that he can score more. Otherwise, he's going to lose on the cards to the Blesses. And in round 4, if I'm being honest, like even Dricus said it, he started breaking down. Adesanya was not used to going at that pace and getting hit back. Like, he was in a war, kind of. A technical war, but he was in a war. And he just wasn't, that's not his style, man. His dogfight is not his style, so he ended up tiring. And Dricus kept tagging Adesanya back because Adesanya, if you notice, he doesn't really use much of his head movement anymore. He kind of uses that John Jones defense where he runs with his feet. He just kind of posts and just retreats. He was doing that a lot in this fight, and Dricus was able to lunge in just enough because AZ wasn't throwing back. He wasn't actually looking for counters. He was trying to get out the way, but like he wasn't swinging back at him. So Dricus was literally just swinging and swinging and swinging until eventually he got into close enough range to tag Adesanya. And once again, Dricus' power is also another reason why he's so effective, because he hits so hard that like fighters respect it. And it's still a factor to where he can literally change the fight with one punch. And that's literally what happened. So Adesanya was going to the legs, he was kicking the body, and he was beating Du Plessis on the feet. And he was winning the fight. Close. It was extremely close, but he was edging the fight out. Like, he was winning. And he started to gain momentum in round 4, and then it wasn't a mistake, guys. What it was is that Dricus hit Adesanya. He tagged Adesanya. Then he chased him down. Izzy was clearly hurt. I even believe he got dropped. Like, there were some moments where Izzy got dropped and, like, nobody was noticing it. But anyways. He got hurt. He even got knocked down at one point. It was a subtle knockdown, and people were like, oh, it was a slip. But I looked like he got knocked down to me. But, Izzy was tired. Dricus tagged him. He started retreating. He was hurt, and Dricus kept coming after him, swinging. Izzy was rocked, and he was tired. Dricus took him down and hopped on the opportunity immediately. It wasn't no big mistake. I guess the only mistake is that, like, he let Dricus just flatten him out, like, so fast and just take the back and choke him out. But he got rocked. He was tired. He didn't really have the strength and just the energy to really just fight off the takedown like that. And he was rocked once again. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. And Dricus lacked up the choke. Izzy was winning until he just wasn't. Dricus has that ability to change the fight at any moment because of the power and the awkwardness. Okay, enough about that. So the two fighters ended up squashing the beef, and I'm very happy for that. But Adesanya didn't look bad to me. He just gassed out. I actually thought he looked decently well. I thought his boxing looked okay. It didn't look great, but he has holes in his boxing because the dude literally swings with his chin in the air. And when he gets into, like, the pocket, like, he gets tagged, he gets countered. And so it's like, he has those boxing holes, and that's why he was unable. There's a reason why he was unable to get Sean Strickland off of him. And Pereira knocked him out, but Pereira has the boxing ability to beat Sean Strickland at his own game, essentially. Izzy doesn't have that. He has holes in his hands, and it's okay, man. He's a kicker. He is not as effective when you take away his kicks, and a lot of this fight was played out in the boxing range, and Dricus was able to tag him. Had Dricus not been able to get into the boxing range, he would have clearly lost this fight. It would have turned into a typical Adesanya performance. This is what I have to say about Izzy, man. It goes to show that, like, if you take a chance on him, a lot of people blame his boring fights on him, but if you take a chance on Adesanya, you'll land. You'll land on him. Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, Yoel Romero, all these guys in the past that has fought Adesanya and it resulted in a boring point fight. Even Marvin Vettori. The reason being is because they did not want to get into the boxing range because they were so scared of getting countered. They didn't want to take a chance. Dricus and Sean Strickland both showed if you come in there with that high guard and you force it to, if you force Izzy back and you force him to the boxing range, he doesn't have the boxing to stay safe in the pocket with you. You're going to tag him. But however, I mean, that's that. So who do I want to see Dricus fight next? So, there's a bunch of people for Duplessis, man. I think that I personally want to see him fight Robert Whittaker again. When he fought Robert Whittaker the first time, it just, like, Robert was going into it, this is the best I felt, this is the best I feel, blah, 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 this is going to be the best performance for me. I didn't feel that way. I didn't think that Robert looked that good, man. I really didn't. I thought that he wasn't moving as well. It just didn't, I don't know. It could have just been Dricus making him uncomfortable, but, like, he seemed off to me. I know you guys want a more technical, like, breakdown of what I mean. It just didn't look like the best version of Whittaker. I think we need to see how Whittaker looks against Khamzat, and I think if Whittaker beats Khamzat, I really think he can beat Duplessis. I really do. Especially with Robert Whittaker's bouncy style, he can lunge into range and really tag Dricus Duplessis in ways that Adesanya wasn't able to, because Whittaker is used to fighting at that pace that they were fighting at. Whittaker can fight at that pace. Adesanya can't. So it's like, and when we saw that, or at least he's not used to it. He hasn't really had to train for that. Robert, he's been fighting like that his whole career. Watch his fight against Yoel Romero. He can fight like that. He can go war for war. Now, the thing is that his chin, and that is the only way that I really think that Dricus can really win the fight. Robert really got ragdoll in that fight, and it was just weird, man. Like, this guy is known for his takedown defense, and yet Dricus just was able to trip him and just beat him up on the ground. Robert can't afford that anymore. Like, he cannot get taken down like that. He needs to fight his fight. If he fights his fight, lunging in from distance with those combinations, blitzing in with the, because Whittaker's really good at that blitzing in and able to tag Dricus Duplessis from range and in the pocket too. He can outbox Dricus in the pocket as well with those blitzing combinations, and then just stay safe on the feet. Have Dricus continue to chase you, and once you get him at that angle, blitz in again and tag him again with the right or tag him with the jab. I really do think that it's with the jab high kick that Whittaker likes to throw. It's a very winnable fight for Whittaker. It's just, I want to see the best version of Whittaker fight Duplessis, because I think the best version of Whittaker can make it a very interesting fight. I know a lot of people want to see Sean Strickland fight him again. I don't really want to see that. The reason being is because it was a very close fight between the two last time, and a lot of people think Strickland won the fight. It was very close. I personally think it should have been a draw, but I get for people vouching for Sean Strickland. I either thought it could have been a draw or Dricus won. I don't think Sean won that fight. If I'm keeping it a bean, if I'm keeping it 100. And with the adjustments, I think Dricus will be able to make adjustments to beat Sean Strickland more clearly the second go-round. I just don't think Sean Strickland has the ability to punish Dricus for what he does. And Dricus was really just fighting him all sloppy and just the way that he wanted to, like that whole fight. Strickland can go to the body. I really do want to see Strickland implement a game plan like that, but then that's when the wrestling comes in. Strickland is not that same guy when he's pushed back, man. He really just does not throw anything when he's pushed back. Go watch the fight. He does not throw anything when he's getting pushed back. He just looks defense. And it just looks like it's just going to be another decision victory again for Dricus. Sean is going to stay safe. He's not going to really go, and he's not going to put himself in danger or take a risk to end the fight or fight Dricus back. He's just gonna do what he does, man. And Dricus is gonna come up with a better game plan and probably use more wrestling and more blitzing combinations from a distance just to get into the distance. And it's gonna be a more safer, more boring, like, way of victory for Dricus, if I'm being honest. I don't think it's gonna be as close. I think it's gonna be a more clear victory, and I just don't think it's gonna be entertaining, guys. I really don't. So I think that Dricus makes the correct adjustments, and he just beats Sean Strickland again in a non-exciting fight. Khamzat would be really interesting. Very interesting, because I've been waiting for Khamzat to fight somebody his size, man. I think Dricus could end up being a nightmare for him because he may be able to get Dricus down in the first 2 rounds. But like those wrestling exchanges with Dricus, man, is going to be heavy on him, man. Dricus is a big, strong guy, and like you don't want to be in some scrambles with him, man. And especially if you can't submit him, and you got a cardio problem to begin with. I mean, you struggled taking a much smaller Kamaru Usman down, dog. You're really gonna have problems with Dricus. And Usman, mind you, Usman took that fight on short notice, and that was the last time we saw him. Not to mention Khamzat's been out for a while. I think that can be really shaky. But if Khamzat shows up 100%, I've always said Khamzat, when he's on his game, he's a future champion. Simply because he just has a style that is very hard to beat. Very hard to beat. But, I mean, he's not going to be able to pull those same games that he did with the welterweights. I mean, he slung poor Li Jingliang around in that cage the first time. He ain't going to be able to do that against, like, if he tries that against Dricus, dude, the fight's going to be over in 3 rounds. The fight's going to be over in 3 rounds because Dricus is going to knock him out. That's another thing. Khamzat has never really fought somebody who can knock him out. Dricus can 100% knock Khamzat Chimaev out, especially Khamzat doesn't move his head at all. That's a 50-50 fight. Like, that's going to be very interesting. But other than that, man, not really much else I have to say about it. I would say if it's not Khamzat, I think the winner of Khamzat Whittaker should win. Should be next for a title fight. But obviously we got to have somebody fight in the meantime. And so I guess it is going to end up being Strickland fighting Duplessis next. And sure, I mean, I'd rather him than literally anybody else. Literally nobody else really is in the talk for it other than him. Pereira said that he's going to come down and fight Dricus Duplessis. I tell you what, if Pereira can pull off that same performance Izzy did, imagine the power. Imagine Pereira doing what Izzy did to Dricus, but Pereira's power. I think we'd be talking about a whole different result, you know. But because Dricus would not be able just to lunge in like how he was doing against Pereira, man. I mean, you literally, like Yuri. Look at Yuri, guys. Yuri, the reason why Yuri lost both times is because Yuri was not able to be himself against Pereira. Because of the power. The power changes everything. I don't care what nobody. Power in wrestling changes everything in a fight, man. Like, you could take the most skilled striker. He gets taken down, all of a sudden the whole fight shifts and he's just not as skilled anymore in that cage because he's worried about the takedown. Now he's getting caught with punches he wouldn't get caught with if it was a straight kickboxing match. Same thing with power. You can be this tenacious wrestler or this tenacious striker or even a brawler. You lunge in there and you get countered one time. You get dropped. Let's say you survive that, you're not going to come in with that. You're not as confident anymore. You're like, oh my gosh, if I fight, like, I can't even fight my fight. Because if I fight my fight, I'm going to get countered and I might get knocked out. Oh yeah, I ain't fighting that way anymore. So, I mean, it could be very interesting. My issue is that Pereira gassed out at Pereira. We haven't even seen much of his cardio at 205, but his cardio wasn't impressive at 185. So I don't think that, and then he does not have as good as takedown defense as Adesanya. I'm keeping it real. Adesanya is the more skilled MMA fighter. I think Pereira, man, I think, if I'm being honest, he has yet for somebody to expose him. I really don't think Pereira. He's a really good striker, and at 205, he's gotten very fortunate with a lot of good strikers. Jan gassed out. If Jan wasn't fighting at altitude, I really think that we'd be talking about a different type of fight. Like, I don't think that he would have done what he did to Jan if it wasn't at altitude. I'm just keeping it real. He has yet to fight somebody like Adesanya has. He has yet to prove himself in the UFC the same way Adesanya has against guys who can wrestle. Like, I even question, like, if Marvin Vettori fought Pereira, I think Marvin Vettori would have a decent shot at beating Pereira. And that's crazy to say because Pereira beat Izzy, and Pereira has his aura about him. But we have yet. I think if Pereira fights, like, for example, if Pereira fight because he's fighting Khalil Roundtree, I think that's really weird. But if he fought, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank to his name. If he really fought The dude that fought Johnny Walker. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name right now? But however, if he fights a guy who can wrestle, like, it's over. I ain't gonna say it's over, because you can always like still win, because you can knock the guy out. Ankalaev. I don't know why I was blanking on his name, guys. I'm bad with names. Forgive me. But if he fights Ankalaev, right? Like, I don't know why the UFC didn't want to make that fight, but, like, I mean, Pereira could have lost that fight, guys. Like, he could have lost that fight. I'm just keeping it a being, like, because Ankalaev has the striking to stay safe, and he has the striking to where he can set up his takedowns and take Pereira to the ground. I don't think that Ankalaev would have won, honestly, because the power is just that insane. Like I said, it can change at any moment. Literally one exchange and boom, he's freaking dead on the floor in the canvas. God forbid, I don't want that to happen, but you get what I'm saying. To where, like, but it's also like he could take Pereira to the ground, and Pereira just does not have the skills to stand back up. And I really believe that Pereira does not have the skills to stand back up. I think he fought Hamzat at 185 or even at 205. Hamzat would take him down, and Pereira would not be able to get back up. He just does not have the skill. In my opinion. Don't come after me. But watch he fights a strong wrestler. Just watch what I mean. Izzy's fought strong wrestlers, but watch Pereira fight a strong wrestler. You'll see. You will see. Anyways, that's all that I got for you guys. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Also, we might bring back questions for this podcast. So if you have any questions for the podcast, please drop them in my comment section, and they'll get answered on the next podcast. It's been your boy Trippy, and I'm out, man.